There's only 2 weeks left in the UFL regular season, but there's still plenty of money to be made before this thing wraps up. Stay tuned for the United Football League Week 9 game breakdowns and best bets. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. What is up, folks? I'm your host here, the Degen Doc, and that is right. We're coming off another hot week of UFL, United Football League, and my goodness, what an absolute wild week 8. Look, I mean, for those who are new, welcome. For those who are coming back, welcome back. Hope you're ready to talk some football, talk some ball. And, as we always do, like to do a quick recap of how we did, how the week went down, and then look at some big news going in. And then we will break down every single game on the slate and give out our bets and then round up with some best bets, DJ play, and get on out of here. But I think we're ready to get right into this week 8 recap because I mean, what an absolutely insane week in the UFL. First of all, let's talk about just how this week went. You know what? Actually, I've got a bone to pick with the UFL. So let me start here. Let me start off with, hey UFL, what's going on? Okay? So let's start with a couple things. One, talked about it a little bit, but the fact that there was two massive games with playoff implications in St. Louis versus Birmingham and in Michigan versus Houston, and that they aired them on the same channel at the exact same time, guaranteeing that you're only going to get to watch one, was absolute blasphemy. You've only got 4 games spread across 3 days. There is zero reason you need to play them at the same time. And if you're going to do it, you have deals with ABC, ESPN, and Fox. Why would you air them both? I just do not understand that. There's not a ton of other sports coming on. NBA and NHL are wrapping up. Just made no sense from the get-go. So that was infuriating. As someone who actually wanted to watch these games, the fact that we weren't able to watch both of these games, pretty annoying. All right, let's also talk about, now you got a situation in the Michigan and Houston game. Throughout the week, no one was really reporting about this. This wasn't a big thing, but magically, Danny Etling got the start, and Bryce Perkins, the likely league MVP, Michigan Panthers quarterback, was just decided at the last second that he was going to not play. It was like a random, not a benching, but essentially he was coming off I guess he had an ankle injury that they said he could play if he was needed to, but it was like emergency role. That's huge for whether it's game planning as a fan, and then you cannot promote gambling and betting so much and just not say that information. Like, that's huge. Whether I saw people with DFS questions, you're talking about player props. I mean, Bryce Perkins versus Danny Etling. There's a reason why there's a difference in the power rankings every week. It just changes the game plan completely. Now, Michigan was still able to win and handle business and take care of things, but they cannot have this random, hey, this guy's not going to play. Like, you got to have some credibility and accountability in the league, especially if you're going to promote gambling so heavy. So that was very annoying. Another very annoying thing, DC Arlington, another great game. They only give us classics with a huge amount of points. It was going down to the wire. It was a 3-point game. Arlington was driving. It was a 2-minute warning. And then all of a sudden, the game went off. The game got kicked off for an NBA pregame show that no one cares about a pregame show. We want to watch the last 2 minutes of an exciting live action football game. I do not want to hear them talk about what they think is going to happen in game 7 or whatever talking point the NBA's had. That was terrible for them to kick that game off and really just pretty abruptly kick it off right in that 2 minutes there. And then the biggest bone, the absolute biggest bone to pick with the UFL right now, they have decided that the Michigan Panthers and the DC Defenders are in prime position to win their conference. And they are both number 1 in the standings in their respective conference. And due to scheduling errors, both Michigan's home field and Ford Field and DC and Audi Field are booked. They are pre-booked. They cannot play at their home stadiums, even if they win their conference, therefore earning the right for a home playoff game. So they've just decided the playoffs are locked. We know the 4 teams going in. And in both situations, we could have where the conference leader is going to have to travel and play an away game. So, look, St. Louis and DC are going to play in St. Louis, and Michigan and, Birmingham are going to play in Birmingham. It kind of makes these last 2 weeks a little bit irrelevant because we know the playoff teams, but usually you'd be fighting for seeding, and we know where they're playing, right? So yeah, they might be able to say Michigan is the number 1 seed, even though they're heading to Birmingham, or DC is the number 1 seed, even though they're heading to St. Louis. Awful, awful, awful planning. They were talking about, hey, if their fields aren't done, you could have played it in Arlington, and done a hub situation because that's where they already are. That way you're maybe they don't have home field, but you're not giving home field to the team that's supposed to be the lesser seed. Ultimately, the UFL said, no, we want fans to be there. So they really catered to St. Louis and to Birmingham. So just honestly, just kind of incompetence from the league and very disappointed to see because, the football is actually really good and we're about to talk about that. But the league and how they handle things is just incredibly incompetent. So, look, I'd love to know your thoughts about this whole playoff situation because we know, with 2 weeks left, there's nothing really left to play for. You've got the 4 teams in, you got 4 teams eliminated, and no matter who's the 1 or 2 seed, the games are going to be played in St. Louis and in Birmingham, just like the championship already being played in St. Louis. I think that's not very good. I understand this league is not the NFL, but man, I think you got to start holding yourself to some higher standards there. So that's my bone to pick with the UFL. A lot of crazy stuff going on. All right, let's talk recap. Let's talk how week 5 went down, or excuse me, week 8 went down. And week 8 was an absolute thriller. Let's look at these scores here and let's kind of dive into the numbers a little bit because it was an insane week. First of all, there was 214 points scored. As you can tell, every single over hit there. Points galore. I think the average on the number of points was something like 50 points a game. Again, DC and Arlington gave us the 2 highest scoring games this season, breaking over 60 there. But there's just points galore. Defense, it wasn't even just defense. There were 16 turnovers. 4 turnovers a game on average, 16 turnovers, a bunch of defensive touchdowns, crazy special team plays. And I think the craziest stat for all of UFL Week 8, every single team that that got more yards, that outgained their opponents in total yards, lost the game outright. I repeat, every single team that got more total yards than their opponent lost the game. Obviously that points to the turnover craziness, but this league is kind of nuts and all over the place. And, I think that actually kind of brings us to our recap for the week as I'm working on pulling this up here to get the tally up as we do every week to see how we did. And it was honestly, it was a man week. It was very up and down. It was, I guess looking at these numbers, it kind of makes sense as far as this was a pretty crazy week. Let's go ahead and pull this up here. So overall, again, this points to the turnovers. It's kind of hard to handicap a game where every single team that, quote unquote played better, as in maybe, they gained more yards, they lost the games outright. But overall, the final tally with everything player props included, we were negative 0.42 on the week there, giving us on the year plus 269. So still in the positive on year to date, but just barely. And we want to go ahead and really have a nice 2 weeks of the regular season and then finish up and get to the postseason. But honestly, man, this week 8 was insane. Like, again, every single team that outgained their opponent lost. 16 turnovers, 214 points. It was a wild week. Entertaining, a very entertaining week for, viewing pleasure. But as far as handicapping goes, yeah, it was pretty tough. Pretty tough. All right, let's get into looking forward. No more looking back in the rearview mirror because we were talking about week 9. That's what we're focusing on here. We're heading on to UFL week 9, and I'll always love to kind of get an idea of how this is going to look with our power rankings heading into UFL Week 9. Pretty similar. At this point, I think I'm pretty, these teams continue to kind of separate and show me who they are. Michigan's still on top for me. Although you may notice that my Michigan with Bryce Perkins and Danny Etling. Danny Etling moved up a little bit because he played the entire game and he dominated a pretty well. Their defense had a pick six. They had almost a punt return to the one. So their team dominated a Houston team that was really fighting for the playoff life. DC continues to win. They've beaten St. Louis. They've beaten Birmingham. They've got to be number 2. St. Louis, although I think Birmingham played the better game there last week, St. Louis did win. And I know home field advantage played a role in that and definitely turnovers, but they got the win, so they got to stay above there. Arlington and Houston continue to have shown promise, but they just ultimately fell flat. They needed that game. It was do or die game for both. They both lost. And then Memphis did beat San Antonio in the Toilet Bowl. Therefore, they come in at number 7, and San Antonio still is at the bottom. How the mighty have fallen. Again, the Brahmas, the worst story, going from one game away from winning it all last year to bringing a lot of guys back and, losing your coach, losing your offensive coordinator, and only having one win on the season. Not great. All right, let's talk some big news here, some major news. We do trades, injury, stuff like that. So typically I record this on Tuesday nights. And I have a little bit more information, not a ton. I still like to get this thing out early in the week to get you guys time to digest it. But tonight, I'm having to do it on Monday night. I'll talk about this later, but essentially, for those that don't know, my primary job, as much as I wish it was this, is not. I'm in the U.S. Army, and unfortunately, due to calls, so for the next couple weeks, I'm going to be sent out to a fairly remote location, and I have no idea what Wi-Fi or any access is going to look like. Bit of a crazy schedule, so I want to make sure I at least got this week out. I will talk more about what's to come at the end of the show, but that's why, maybe not as much news as we typically get. The big news, though, is the reigning defensive player of the year in Michigan defensive end Brilliant Speaks is back. That is right. He went on the IR early in the season, and they just lost Frank Ginda a week ago, who was the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year. But Speaks, who was led the UFL in sacks last year, he's back this week, according to Mike Nolan, who's always someone you got to kind of take with a grain of salt. But he should be back, activated off IR, which is huge for a Michigan defense that is looking to make a postseason run. I mean, they are one of the favorites to win it all, and this only bolsters their defense there. And then Memphis had to cut Wes Hills. He's still injured. Showed some good promise at running back, so they signed running back Jada Byers. So no Wes Hills, but Breland Speak is back for Michigan. All right, folks, let's get into our Week 9 slate. We're going to break down each game, go game by game, talk about how I think this is going to go down, give out any bets I have for it. We'll do best bets, DJ play at the end, and then we'll wrap up and get on out of here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our Friday night game. You're back to Friday, Saturday, and a finish up with one Sunday game. So really quick, I do want to show this before we get into it. Just, hey, this is what I was talking about, right? So everything's already set. We know on June 8th the teams that are playing and where it's located, which kind of unfortunate, kind of takes some of the fun out of it. But at least, hopefully, at the very least, it means that we're going to get some butts in seats. And I know St. Louis is going to do their part, but I'm hoping that Birmingham will at least, hey, you're back-to-back spring champions. Hopefully the fans at least come out and support. But all right, let's get into this first game here. San Antonio is like the Friday home slot is now all of a sudden theirs. They didn't have their first whole game until I think like week 5 or 6. So weird scheduling where it kind of did them no favors because by the time they were playing at home, they were basically out of it. But Friday night here, May 23rd, 8 p.m. Eastern time, San Antonio, Texas. We've got the 6-2 St. Louis Battlehawks heading to the 1-7 San Antonio Brahmas. Battlehawks laying 8 on the road there, minus 450 on the money line. And Brahmas catching 8 and plus 340 home dogs. Over under sitting at 41.5. Last time these two teams played was back in week 2. St. Louis put it on them at home 26-9. That was Kellen Mond versus Manny Wilkins, so quite a few quarterbacks ago. But essentially they were able to control the line of scrimmage and run all over San Antonio. San Antonio was able to get some things going in the run game as well, but really they controlled the game and kind of never looked back. So, what's going to change? How is this going to look this time? Is it going to be the same? Well, here's how I see it. The St. Louis Battlehawks have become extremely one-dimensional with Max Duggan at quarterback. Now, his legs do add, a little bit of an option, as did Manny Wilkins, but this pass offense is not good. They are number 8 in the league. They're the worst pass offense, although they have the best rush offense. This pass offense is not good. And you know what else is not good? San Antonio's defense. But it's a little bit easier to defend the run when you don't have to worry as much about the pass. And I think, this one-dimensional offense that St. Louis is going to run, I do think they're going to be able to control the game, but I don't think they're going to be able to really pull away. I think this is going to be a little bit closer. Look, San Antonio, as bad as they've been record-wise, they've shown a lot more fight ever since Kevin Hogan has taken over quarterback and Peyton Pardee. They've kind of shown that they have a little bit of pride, especially playing at home in front of those fans in San Antonio. I think they're going to go ahead and show that. Look, St. Louis is coming off a massive, massive win. They just locked down their playoff positioning. They beat the back-to-back champions in the Birmingham Stallions. It was a very high-pressure game. Fans were going nuts for it. It came down to the wire. And they're now going to they're already in the playoffs. They know they're playing at home. They're going to this San Antonio team. It's one of the worst in the league record-wise, right? I think they're going to be a little bit sleepy here. I think 8 points is just too much. Give me San Antonio plus the 8 there. I think they keep it close. I think Kevin Hogan's competent. Josh Corbin has been very, very nice in what he can do in the run game. And I just think that they're going to have to settle for some field goals. They got a great kicker in Hot Rod. They've got a solid defense. I think it's going to just be an ugly, ugly game. Give me something like, 13-20, 13-18, something like that. So I'm also going to go with the under 41.5 there. St. Louis's defense is really good. They, sometimes have to settle for field goals. San Antonio, as much as they've shown to be competent, they're a run-first team at this point. Both these teams are going to want to run the ball and kind of grind and be fine with three yards in a cloud of dust, play some field position there. So I just don't think this game is going to have a lot of fireworks or things like that here that we've seen in the past couple weeks. So playing an under here, a little bit dangerous in this league, but give me San Antonio plus the 8 and give me the under 41.5 in this Friday night game here. All right, folks, we're going to move on to the Saturday slate. But before we do that, I got to tell you about some of the awesome sponsors we got over here at IDP Plus Bets. That is right, folks. We've got Fast Draft Fantasy. Fast Draft Fantasy, it is so simple. It's in their name. Start drafting faster today. And what do I mean by that? Look, where everyone's worst part of the draft is waiting, 5-10 minutes until it's your turn again because you got 60 seconds and everybody's taking so long. Like, this is a life or death situation. You know the guys you want to draft, and you want to just draft them now. So head on over to Fast Draft, 20-second on the clock maximum there. All drafts, we've got 10 teams, 6 rounds, and all drafts under in 10 minutes. So you're going to want to get over to Fast Draft Fantasy today. And plus, I'll make the deal a little bit sweeter for you. You'll get you a free $50 when you use the promo code plus Degen Doc. Here's what you got to do. Download Fast Draft Fantasy, use promo code plus Degen Doc, deposit $50, and bam, a free $50 in your account on us. Also want to encourage you guys to head on over to idpplus.com. Look, we've got all different subscriptions and memberships over there, and we have subscribers only content. We have a subscribers only Discord. There's different memberships. You're going to want to check them out. IDP Plus, one of the only places talking football 365 24/7. Don't want to miss out over there. And then one of the best things about the offseason is the Fantasy Football Expo. Get your 2025 Fantasy Football Expo tickets today at thefantasyfootballexpo.com. August the 8th through the 10th in beautiful Canton, Ohio. And if you are a fan of the Fantasy Football Expo, you probably know Bob Lung and his Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. It's his 10th annual edition. only $15. All of that information is going to be in the show notes below. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get back into the game. We're talking about game number 2 on the slate here, Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. We've got the 3-5 Arlington Renegades heading to Memphis, Tennessee to take on these showboats, the 2-6 showboats. Arlington laying 4 on the road, minus 215 on the money line. Memphis catching 4 at home, plus 180 home dogs. Over-under sitting at 40.5. Last time these two teams played was back in 2024 season. So last year, week 7, Arlington put it on them, 47-23 there. Oh, man. So Arlington and Memphis. Arlington is, they have so much potential, much like last season, although I think they even have more potential and have shown it at times. So much potential, but they just keep losing these close games to good teams. I mean, they had Birmingham on the ropes. They have DC on the ropes twice. They beat St. Louis, right? They've had Michigan on the ropes. That came down to the final play. So they are, they just cannot execute in the clutch, but talent and potential wise, they are up there with the upper echelon of the league. And I don't think Memphis is in that same tier here. I know Memphis was able to pull off a couple of nice wins there, beating, 2 overtime thriller wins that they've been able to pull off. But Memphis, they had 36 passing yards last game. They did get it going on the ground with 152 rushing yards, which they had been one of the worst. They are the worst rush offense in the league. So that was a little bit surprising there. But they had a pick 6. They had some fortunate turnover luck there to go ahead and eke out that victory against San Antonio. I don't see them as a good game. They had Troy Williams starting last game. He was very meh. Again, 36 pass yards. He had 20 or 30 yards on the ground rushing. It was really Jalen Jackson who had one big run that kind of broke it open a little bit. But yeah, they are really their rush offense is typically terrible. Their rush defense is not very good. I think Arlington's going to be able to kind of let out some demons here and beat up on a pretty bad team here in Memphis. They don't know who their quarterback is. Could be Troy Williams. They could get EJ Perry. I obviously moved off Dresser Wynn. I think Dresser Wynn's the best quarterback of the 3 by far. Arlington's defense, although last week DC and Arlington always have shootouts. I don't read too much into that. I still think this Arlington defense is pretty good, and I think they can cause some problems for. They've got 13 takeaways on the year, and this is a Memphis offense that's given the ball away 15 times. They have a -9 turnover margin. I think turnovers are going to bite them. That's going to really kind of get this game out of reach. So I do like Arlington to give me Arlington laying the 4 there as the road favorite. And then also give me another under here. I know we just saw 4 straight overs, and it's a little bit dangerous, but I think that Arlington, again, penalties and not converting in the red zone has kind of been their thing. So they could be moving the ball up and down the field, and this could still be a 15-6 game, right? And I going into the 4th quarter or something like that. So I really think that Arlington is going to be able to separate and look a lot better on the field. But I think scoreboard wise, I think it's going to be something closer to like 20-10, 20-9, 20-6, something like that. Memphis's offense, it also struggles to score. They only put up 15 points a game or 16 points a game, excuse me. I think Arlington's defense is going to be able to give them trouble. I think Memphis is really going to struggle to move the bar. And as much as Arlington has the potential to be a great offense, they, whether it's penalties or red zone, or they always tend to shoot themselves in the foot before really lighting it up. So give me Arlington laying the 4 as just a better team, and then give me the under 40.5. Both these teams struggle to execute down in the red zone, and a penalty or 2 is going to cause a little bit of headaches for their head coach and lead to less points out there than there should be on that scoreboard. All right, going over to the back half of the Saturday game. This is a USFL Conference Championship preview 2 weeks early. Same teams, same location. We have the 6-2 Michigan Panthers heading to the 5-3 Birmingham Stallions to take on those Stallions in Proactive Stadium in Birmingham, Alabama, 3 p.m. Eastern time. The over-under sitting at 44.5. Michigan laying 1.5 on the road, -130. Birmingham +1.5, +110. Home dogs here, small dogs again, Birmingham. Now, as good as Michigan's played, we do have to say they played earlier in the year. Birmingham won by a score of 21-12. Now, that game was Matt Corral versus a splitting Bryce Perkins and Danny Etling. So things have changed. Bryce Perkins now your number one overall, who we do expect to be back. They just got Brilliant Speaks back. And no Matt Corral for sure. We don't know if it's going to be Jamar Smith, Case Cookis, Alex McGoo, but I think Corral is the one who's shown the most promise there. Is Jamar Smith has played well, but he had a really bad pick six that ultimately was the kind of deciding factor in the game. So the way I see this going down, and of course I have to mention Michigan has never beaten the Birmingham Stallions, so this is a giant monkey on their back. You kind of wonder what are these two teams like? How much are they going to show? Are they going to play balls to the wall because these guys are trying to get a shot for the NFL? That's tend to where I'm at with these kind of weeks that quote unquote don't matter. These are guys. At the end of the day, the UFL is not the main goal. The main goal is to get another shot in the NFL or get a shot in the NFL. So I think these guys are going to be playing hard. I don't think there's going to be any loafing or anything like that. It just one, it's hard to kind of put that into your handicap, and two, again, the UFL is not the end goal. The NFL is, and if they want to do that, these guys got to keep producing and they got to play 110%. So, given the fact that I expect both these teams to be playing their hearts out here, give me Michigan. Give me Michigan -1.5 to get the monkey off their back finally. Expect a healthy Bryce Perkins. You're going to get Brilliant Speaks back. He's going to add to that pass rush. St. Louis, when they were able to affect Jamar Smith in that offense, it was the pass rush. The Birmingham Stallions were moving the ball, but that St. Louis pass rush, whether it was sacks or turnovers, plays leading to turnovers, that is really what allowed St. Louis to win that game. And I think with Brilliant Speaks coming back, that Michigan D-line is one of the better ones. This is not a typical Birmingham offensive line. I think they're going to have an edge there with Michigan. And that secondary for Birmingham has been very questionable. I know it wasn't on great display last week because Max Duggan and that offense just can't take advantage of it. But Bryce Perkins can. And I like Perkins here to come back and show us why he's the league MVP. I think I'm no play on the total here. I think we could see some fireworks, but these are two good, solid teams that know each other pretty well. So this, may be a situation where I could see I could see both ways there. So I'm just going with Michigan -1.5. I think they're finally able to get it done and beat Birmingham. And then we'll see how that rematch is a couple weeks later in that conference championship game. But I think Perkins being back, Speaks being back, I think, Birmingham's still trying to figure out who the quarterback's going to be. I think they're going to be able to take advantage of the a pass defense that has struggled at times for Birmingham. So give me the Michigan Panthers on -1.5 to go into Proactive Stadium and finally beat the Stallions. All right, last game on the slate, and that is our Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Houston, Texas. We've got the 6-2 DC Defenders heading to Houston, Texas to take on the 3-5 Rut next. DCE laying 3, -110 there, -155 on the money line. Houston catching 3 as a home dog, +135. Over-under sitting at 45.5. Highest total on the board there. Last time these two teams played was back all the way back in week 2 of last season. DC won by a score of 23-18 there. All right. So DC, man, early in the season, I thought they were a little bit of fool's gold, but they have really turned it on. It really kind of put it all together. Defense looking a little suspect, but they come up with the, takeaways. They do have one of the better turnover margins. They have the best turnover margin in the UFL, +7 with 15 takeaways and only 8 giveaways there. But really for me, where I think this game is going to be won and lost is DC has found a running game with Deion Jackson. They got away from Abram Smith, who was their guy, 2 years ago, who was really kind of one of the best runners in the league at that point. But Deion Jackson, once he's become the RB1, catching passes out of the backfield or just running hard. They have really kind of opened up their whole offense they were used to be very one dimensional, very pass happy. They're still, pass more than run, but this running game has allowed them to become more balanced and really become a legit threat for the UFL championship here. So give me DC -3. Houston has zero, zilch, no type of home field advantage. So, it's not like we have to worry about anything there. But DC, I do really like what they've done on offense. They've been able to keep it more balanced these past couple weeks. They've been able to put it up some nice points. Jordan Tayamo's looking very comfortable in this offense. Whereas Houston, oh man, if Houston was gonna, they show some promise and they fall flat on their face. Right, last week going up against Danny Etling was a great opportunity against Michigan to keep your playoff hopes alive, and they just fell flat. I mean, I know it was 30-18, but really it was 30-12 up until the very end of that game. There, they kind of dressed it up a little bit. Whether it's turnovers, penalties, red zone execution, this Roughnecks team is just continues to be bad. They cannot get over the hump there. I like Jalen McClendon. I like Justin Hall, but outside of those guys, it's a little bit questionable as far as playmakers. I think this DC pass rush is going to be able to really disrupt this Houston offensive line. So I really like DC this league. I think their defensive line is likely the best in the league. They've got some solid cornerback play on the back end. I don't think Houston's going to be able to really run the ball much at all. They come in as the number 7 rushing offense anyway. So I really like DC to, I think Houston's going to be forced to throw the ball. They threw the ball 50 times last week. I think they're going to have to be forced to throw the ball again. If they do that, there's probably going to be some strip sacks and 4 or 5 sacks in Jalen McClendon's future. Unfortunately, not the most mobile guy. And those pass rushers for DC are just dudes, man. They've got like 4 or 5 guys that absolutely can get after the quarterback. So yeah, I like DC there. I think they're going to be able to put up some points, and I really think that defensive line is going to be able to kind of bait Houston into some turnovers there. That's going to really flip the script. So give me DC -3 there. All right, folks, that is it for our game breakdowns. And now we're going to go ahead and over to best bets, Degen play, and then we're done out of here for UFL Week 9. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about our best bets here for Week 9. Leading us off, give me Arlington -4. It's a little bit simplistic in the synopsis of the handicap, but Arlington is the much better team. They're the more talented team. They have more potential. Memphis doesn't have a quarterback. They don't really know what they're doing. They can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. I think Arlington's defense is going to be able to have their way with an offense that seems very gimmicky right now. Memphis, they barely had. They didn't even have. I think they had 166 yards of total offense. They had 36 passing yards. The fact they won that game, no, San Antonio gifted them that game with turnovers. This is not a good offense at all. Defense is respectable, but I like Arlington. They've just got too many weapons. I think they're going to be able to kind of beat them down there. So give me Arlington -4. And then give me DC -3 as my second best bet for UFL Week 9. Similar picture here. DC, a much better team than Houston. I think the running game of DC is going to give that defense some fits there. And ultimately, it's DC's defensive line that is going to destroy Houston's offensive line and make McClendon's day very, very difficult. And it's going to lead to some turnovers there. So give me the DC defenders. And for my DGen play this week, we're going to keep it pretty simple. Give me Arlington. Give me DC on the money line. Parlay together. +141. Nice little juicy +140 play there for this week. Keeping it very simple. These are my 2 teams that I love this week. And I think at the very least, they get it done on the money line. If you want to be extra spicy, you can go ahead and parlay them on the spread, but I will just do the money line. Let's go ahead and see one come through the hoop there, as they say. All right, folks, that is the UFL Week 9 game breakdowns and best bets. Now, I kind of alluded to this earlier, but I just wanted to mention future of this show, as in like the next couple weeks, really the rest of the season, unfortunately, a little bit up in the air. Like I said, hey, soldier first, right? And which I just have to say, these thoughts or views are my own. This is not the representative of the DoD or the entire Army. These are my own views and thoughts. All right, now that we've gotten out of the way, I don't represent the entire U.S. Army, but what I'm saying is, got tasked out, going to be in a pretty remote location for the next 3 weeks. No idea what Wi-Fi is going to look like. Don't know what free time or whatever. There's a pretty decent time zone difference, so we'll see. Gonna do my best. Don't know if I'm gonna be able to get on the pod and record. I would love to finish out the season, with week 10 and then the 2 playoff weeks, but just a little bit up in the air. If I'm unable to, there's a chance that someone else from the network is going to be able to, do week 10 and the 2 playoff games or whatever. I might be able to do articles, but not do podcasting, just given the situation, the living situation and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I wish I had answers. I'll find out soon, but I have no idea what I'm walking into, basically. So if this is the last show, I really, really appreciate all the support. It's been a wild ride, ups and downs and things like that. Right now we're sitting a bit positive. Hopefully we can really have a nice week and kind of really push that over the edge there. I would say that on X at the Degen Docs, where I play, hey, we do sides and totals on the YouTube video, and then always player props is going to come out Thursday, Friday, because that's when the lines drop, right, with these depth charts and things. On X, I should still be somewhat active. I don't think it's going to be quite as much, but, I think I'll have the time. It's just I don't know what Wi-Fi and things like that are going to look like. So I would say on X is more likely that I'll be able to definitely get some plays out there. But, hey, my goal is to figure out a situation to where I can knock these podcasts out, and be able to do them. But there is a chance, maybe it's not me or maybe it does not happen. So I hope that's not the case, but hopefully we can deliver something to y'all, even if it's in written format or something like that. So, hey, again, appreciate all the love, would appreciate any likes, comments, notification or subscriptions, things like that. We are giving you football 24/7, 365. I will be back at some point. Again, no more than 3 weeks, anything like that, anything crazy. But hey, let me know what you think about the playoff situation. We'll love chopping it up with you guys in the comments. Again, player props is going to be over on X at the Degen Doc. And check out what else we got going over here on the channel. Of course, IDP Plus is the main ship there, and the bets is a nice, profitable side piece. All right. So, enough rambling. UFL Week 9. Hopefully, it's just as crazy and fun, but more profitable than Week 8. We're wrapping up here. I'm looking forward to, how this really shakes out, especially the playoffs. I think the playoffs this year is going to be absolutely incredible. We've had some really, really good games, so definitely do not miss out. A couple overtime games, crazy thrilling games. So exciting. Get your mind back ready for football, and let's turn a little bit of profit here. All right, folks, the Degen Doc here from IDP Plus Bets. I am out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.